apologies have been received from Councillor Sarrafi, Byron and Lieutenant Boyle. Any other apologies? Any declarations of interest, item 2? The minutes of the previous meeting are usually approved. Anybody got anything to say about them? We approve them? Thank you. Now go on to agenda item number 4, which is health, safety and welfare annual report. Craig Whitfield is going to take us through the report. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Craig Whitfield, so I'm a Group Manager in the Operational Response Service Delivery team. Previously, for 3.5 years, the Health and Safety Manager, so I'm responsible for writing the report that's in your pack today. I'm going to take you through a presentation that highlights what's detailed within the report that you've been given. Okay, happy to take any questions at the end of the presentation, should anybody have any. I just wanted to start really with a sort of reinforcement of the commitment. So this is embedded in all our policy, procedure, service instructions, etc. That the Fire and Rescue Authority, the Chief Fire Officer and Strategic Leadership Team, through visible leadership, ensure the health, safety and welfare of all our staff. Okay, so that is the cornerstone, if you like, of our commitment to health and safety. So the annual report that's in your pack covers in essence a few key areas. So we obviously operate 2 local performance indicators that measures our performance. We break these down into management areas for across the year, and that's workplace. That's everything to do with our property, structures, place, people, etc. And then road risk, that's everything to do with our fleet. So fire engines right down to small light goods vehicles. We also cover areas to do with inspection, auditing and monitoring in terms of health and safety. That's an ongoing thing that's undertaken throughout the year. And again, I'll talk on the performance indicators as we work our way through the presentation. Okay, so I'm going to start with workplace. I'll start with the headlines before I break down into different areas that we go across, okay? So in total, over the 2022-23 period, there were 40 injuries to operational staff. Okay, 21 of them individuals remained in work, and of those who went off duty, 5 further individuals returned within 7 days. In terms of non-operational staff, so there were 9 injuries recorded, with no individuals going off. I think it's just worth highlighting there, obviously, quite a big workforce who's involved in an awful lot of activity, from operational response to incidents, training, routine activities, etc. So a very active workforce. And again, in relation to when I break it down, you'll see how them figures kind of marry up and result in good performance. And the non-operational staff not actually going off work kind of underpins and highlights the low level and minor nature of some of them injuries. So injury type, what you'll be able to see from this chart, which again is contained in the annual report, is the bulk of the injuries relate to sprain or strain and pain only. So that actually accumulates to 16, which is 40% of our injuries was a strain or a sprain, and 9, which is muscular discomfort, pain only, okay? So over time, we've done a lot of work around the positive reporting culture, so that we're able to actually monitor, manage trends, make sure we have the correct PPE procedures, manual handling, all that type of stuff in use. So what you will see is 9 individuals reporting a bit of pain is actually quite positive, because it allows us to make sure that everything's in place with a check and balance. The 9 pain only results to about 23%. And then again, another minor one in terms of cuts. So cuts or lacerations to staff is another 15. So in total, what you've got across them three areas for reporting injuries, it makes up 78% of our injuries. So I think there's something you can understand in that detail and kind of the nature of them injuries. So I'll now work through the breakdown of the key performance indicators. Okay, so the first one is our attendance at operational incidents. So what you will see from the chart is we had a total of 16 injuries at operational incidents. Okay, and I'm going to touch on it later in the presentation, a graph or a chart that will show you in relation to how many incidents we attend. Okay, but we're talking sort of 18,000 odd incidents, and we've got 16 injuries. Okay, out of the 16 injuries, 9 of those individuals stayed in work. 7 went off duty with their injury, but 2 returned within 5 days. So a very small number. And then when you kind of understand what we undertake in operational activity, going into fires, water, working at height, depth, etc., it is quite a risk-critical environment, and I think that reflects just how good we are at responding to operational incidents. Again, just a bit of further detail. So 5 of the injuries were due to handling, lifting or carrying activities, and a further 4 were slip, trips or falls. Operational training, and I really do want to make quite a point on this one. So out of operational training, we introduced this performance indicator in I think it was just before that, 2018, 19, because we didn't have one. It was incorporated into dealing with incidents. So we started with very minimal information to be able to see where the performance indicator would sit. So it originally sat at 5, and then as the data has been accumulated, it's now around 8. So in this period, we had 7 injuries in risk-critical training. Okay, only 2 of those individuals went off duty. I can just try to give an insight into what that looks like. So 331 core training courses. So that's 231 courses where we put staff in the BA firehouse, in the fire behaviour containers, in dealing with RTCs, working at height, etc. We've also done 90 off-station exercises and 38 high-rise exercises at Gaywood Green in Kirby. So, and 2 recruit courses, so very new staff from all different backgrounds, learning all these skills for the first time. So I'm quite positive to report that there was a low level of injuries in this area, with only 2 individuals actually having to take a bit of time off work. Okay, so operational activity, routine activity, so home fire safety checks, hydrants, site inspections, building inspections, etc. So the predicted performance kind of line for this is 21, and we've come in at 17. It's a slight increase on the previous figures of 21, 22, but again, I'll underpin some of that when we come to talk around pre and post COVID. There's obviously an impact in terms of the activity that's undertaken during that time. So of the 17 injuries for operational routine activities, 7 remained on duty. So they carried on with their duties, stayed on the run on fire engines and fire stations. Obviously 10 of the others went off duty. And again, in terms of trends, 11 injuries related to sprain or strain type injuries, with a further 5 for lifting and carrying. We did do a little bit of trend analysis also in terms of profile, and 14 of the injuries were over the age of 30. So non-operational staff, a very, very marginal increase on the previous year of 1. Again, we monitor this and don't put a performance indicator next to it. So this is everybody who's not operational, covers a vast range of staff members, from people who might work down in the canteen, the offices, workshops, tender drivers, cleaners, etc. So quite a broad range of people that this covers. And again, out of this, out of the 10 injuries, only 9 didn't go off duty. So again, another positive. And that does tie into, we really do work hard through the year around the positive reporting culture, because if there is a problem that needs fixing or something that we can make marginal improvements on, then we certainly look to do that in the health and safety team. So we always have a duty under RIDDOR to report certain types of injuries, so major and minor. The The major injuries for this reporting period were 2, so that relates to a breaking of a bone, for example. And then the riddle minor injuries is more around time off work. So because the individual who may have suffered a strain of the back takes more than 7 working days off, we just have to report it to the HSE. Okay, so again, and that ties into some of the previous figures that we've seen. In the previous health and safety annual report for 21-22, we'd seen a slight decline in near miss reporting. So at the back of that report was a clear commitment to work hard to increase near miss reporting. There's a direct correlation between near miss reporting, accidents and injuries, and health and safety culture. So we committed to that in the previous year's report, and have worked hard through a number of different facets in terms of working with team leaders, managers, crews, etc. So we've seen a steady increase in near miss reporting. In terms of relating that into figures, that's a 61% increase on the previous year. So we're quite pleased that that's a positive step forward. Okay, so that broadly covers off the workplace side of things in terms of accidents and injuries. I'll now look to move on to road risk, and again, that's the whole.
Just before you go on, could you give us some kind of a flavour of what actually happens, the actual reporting procedure? If somebody has an injury, would it be the line manager they would go to?
Yeah, so it's really quite robust in terms of an accident or injury. So an injury will occur. So if someone slips in a corridor today or a firefighter gets injured, they will report that to their line manager or another person in a seniority who can progress it. It will be logged and registered with fire control. Fire control will contact the health and safety team. In the first instance, when it lands with fire control or the line manager, there's a welfare element. So if it was hearing somebody slipped, the line manager will go and attend the scene. They will look if there's any immediate actions that need to be undertaken, such as calling off the area, cleaning up the spillage. We then really concentrate on welfare. So does the individual need first aid? Do they need to attend a walk-in, hospital, etc.? If that's the case, we will assign a station manager or a supervisor to be able to do with that. We then use our Oceans health and safety management system. So that will be recorded on Oceans. So the line manager will fill that in. It will land with the health and safety team, and then we'll designate levels of investigation, whether it's a level 1, level 2, level 3. We'll assign investigating officers, take witness statements. So it's quite broad in terms of what happens. All of that is then concluded in terms of an investigation. And actually, to manage workplace and road risk, in my previous role, I chaired the workplace review group and the road risk review group. We review all incidents in that, and we look at what occurred, what was the remedial action, is there something broader, and then we look to mitigate so it doesn't happen again.
Can I just ask, just to follow on? So I assume it probably doesn't need asking to be quite frank, but just to be clear in my own mind, the actual procedure, is it are our workforce, both operational and non-operational, are they reminded every year that we're given something, to reinforce the steps that they are supposed to make, and what are available to them as well?
Yeah, so that,
is that important? Obviously, our new workers will get this straight away, but just to remind people that there is a system in place for their benefit, more than anybody.
Yeah, so the department is quite on the forefront in terms of communications out to staff members. So we publish communications throughout the year in terms of safety flashes, procedures, etc. As people step into managerial positions with line manager responsibility, they will get the input on options, etc. And it's just a continual sort of loop in terms of being able to educate the staff on that. What we have got on the system, it's 2 clicks, so you can go onto the portal and you can click report an incident, and you are in. You don't have to log in, so any staff member can report that incident. And then I would suggest the team actively monitor for any of that, so that the procedure is all encompassing and followed.
Thank you.
Okay, so as I said, we'll move on to road risk now. So this is our fleet. We currently operate 256 vehicles, which have covered well in excess of over 1 million miles last year. Just to put a bit of context into that, I think in the previous year, we had 228 vehicles, so the fleet has increased as we've worked through elements of our IRMP and so on and so forth. We cover blue light response and routine activity, so the fire engines responding to incidents and the fire engines in and out, in and about in the community, and then also everything that supports that from tender drivers, workshops, prevention, protection, etc. So the total number of road traffic collisions involving our service vehicles was 79 in 2023, which is an increase of 17, and I'll talk through that. Again, it's covered in the report, but I'll talk through that in detail. And in terms of where we would be on our overall target, it's slightly over, which puts us in the amber. But I'll also just underpin that with where we are today in relation to that. So blue light response, probably our most risk critical area of the business when we're talking around fleet. So we've seen 46 incidents occurring for the reporting period last year. So as you can see, we are over where we expected to be. We do a really, really detailed analysis, trend analysis into this that covers everything from time, location, area, speeds, all that type of stuff. So we do cover a lot. Some of the headline stuff is that we found 41 of the incidents were moving forward, generally through tight gaps. 32 were below 5 miles an hour, which is really, really slow. And 18 of them resulted in no damage to fire appliances. Okay. Also, what we find is a significant proportion of these tend to be wing mirrors. So we either clip a wing mirror on a third-party vehicle, or we clip our own wing mirror. Okay. Just to give a bit of insight into what we're actually attending to. So we had 10 property fires. Okay, with 5 of them being confirmed persons reported. We had 5 AFAs, which we treat life risk until we get there and we know otherwise. 4 of them were life risk, so we had an actual fire. And 3 RTCs where we're looking at persons trapped. Okay, so some really risk critical incidents that we're looking to get to. Okay. The current situation where we are for this reporting year, which will obviously come back in next year's report, is we are much better off. We are seeing a 50% improvement in performance, and I'll highlight at the end of the report when I talk about what's next, the breadth of work that's been going on to make sure that we reduce that number. So routine activities, that was a key focus the previous year, so we've done a lot of work around that and seen a reduction. As you will see, the predicted performance line is 27. We want to be as absolutely far below as that as possible, but we came in at 22, okay, which is an improvement on the previous year. Again, 13 of these were moving forward and 6 in reverse, and we do have robust procedures in place for low-speed manoeuvres involving fire appliances. 18 of them were under 5 miles an hour. 4 reported no damage, and 14 were on returning to station following an incident. Light vehicle response, so this is all the officers' cars, so senior managers responding on a blue light response to an incident, or specialist officers such as tactical advisors, etc., has again remained 0 in terms of collisions for another consecutive year, which is really pleasing to see. Light vehicle routine, so this is our light vehicle fleet, which is quite significant. We've had a total of 12, which again is under where we would expect to be when we use our empirical data to look at. Very marginal increase on the previous year. The trend analysis for this shows us that 8 of them were under 5 miles per hour, 7 were going forward, and 5 were in reverse. All minor in nature, relating to scrapes, scuffs, and wing mirrors. So the next couple we monitor. So damage while stationary. So this is other vehicle damage caused when the vehicle is stationary during response to routine activity. So in essence, what this means is during our inspections, we will come across some unexplained damage, maybe a dent or a scratch or something like that. So we record that. Significant decrease on the previous reporting period of 9, which is, again, pleasing to see. And then the final one, I think, is hit by other vehicle. So again, we monitor being hit by another vehicle, and we've seen an increase, which puts us on, I believe, 22. Right? Yeah, 22. We monitor this because obviously the welfare of our staff is paramount, and if we can do anything to understand anything better around that, if we can feed into our partners in prevention around the partnership work, then we do. But everything that's to do with being hit by another vehicle, again, we will be informed, we will check on welfare, we will inform health and safety and the legal department and do due diligence on that. Okay, so this was the table I wanted to just draw your attention to, so that what we've seen there, I think personally, on the whole, is really positive in terms of some of our figures, and there's some key areas to really do some work on. However, we've also done pre and post-COVID impact in terms of how busy we are, the incidents attended, mobilisations, etc. So what you should see from this is we've had an increase, certainly going back from 1920 up to post-COVID, we've had an increase of just over 3,500 incidents that we're attending. Appliances responding to that is 6,837 more, so 6,837 more times we've sent appliances out to incidents, and then appliance movements that kind of support that, so standby, backfill, etc., is another increase of 2,045. So I wanted to use that really as a pictorial image to kind of highlight there's nearly 9,000 extra occasions that we've been out in the community in fire engines and vehicles, and obviously every time there's always a risk every time somebody gets in a vehicle, whether it's within a service or your own vehicle. So we have seen an increase in the activity. Onto some of the broader stuff, and again the details within the report, but we do have a regime of inspection, audit and monitoring in place that's conducted at various levels. So my team undertake an annual general health and safety audit. So they visit my highest skilled technical officer, or my previous highest skilled technical officer, visits every premise in Merseyside Fire and Rescue once a year and gives it an absolute top to bottom health and safety inspection. They look at everything from estates, storage, cleanliness, maintenance, PPE, notice boards. They really go through it, okay? Then they will come back, write a detailed report and distribute any actions that needs to sort of concentrate on any areas. They will also feed back and celebrate where we found actually it's been really top notch. And then secondly, so following a reorganisation of the senior manager team in April last year, every station now has its own station manager, okay? They will once a month, using a pro forma on the Ocean system, walk around their station with the on-duty watch manager or crew manager, and they will conduct a health and safety inspection. And again, another detailed inspection. They'll rectify issues where they can and identify any other issues that might need to come back into the health and safety department. So that's in place. We also then do active monitoring. So every time we go onto a station for operational audits or training, etc., the station managers are briefed on active monitoring around looking for good health and safety practice. So we'll look forward. Again, this is in the back end of the report. I'll just try and cover it in a bit more detail for you. So first and foremost, we're going to look to further reduce the number of work-related accidents and injuries and any associated absence. Okay. So how are we going to do that? Active monitoring that I've already mentioned. We've now improved on the monthly health and safety audits and general inspections, so we've broadened them out a little bit more with further areas to look at using HSE best practice. We continue to undertake focused trend analysis. We do that on all accidents, injury and collisions. We've introduced workplace review newsletters, so following every workplace review group, we'll now produce a newsletter that covers any trends that have been discussed within that group. The weekly bulletins have also been introduced, and they only support the current safety flashes and safety observations, communications that come out. Continue to build on the increase in near miss, so we are going the right direction in terms of the trajectory for that. So we're going to continue to push that and ensure near miss reporting remains high. The second point, so using intelligence-led approach and data analysis to help minimise appliance collisions, specifically in blue light response, which I think is really important. So some of the work that we've done in that period, certainly from the 1st of April, is so we've currently producing a professional low-speed manoeuvre training video with an external provider. So that will really give a detailed presentation for staff on the procedures for low-speed manoeuvre. This will be rolled out by station managers across all locations, and we will track all staff for completion. We've got a Learn Pro that we are making, introducing as a mandatory Learn Pro on hand signals, etc., to deal with appliance manoeuvres. We're going to continue to encourage near-miss reporting. We're going to make better use of the options system also in terms of tracking individuals and key sort of areas where collisions might be higher than other areas or locations. We've introduced more defined instruction and detail on door procedures at all locations to minimise any collisions we're having with the engine house doors. And we'll also continue to produce the road risk review letters. And through the road risk review group, we are also now exploring if there's any feasibility in additional appliance sensors, or warning sensors. Sorry, went back on. So continue to collaborate as well. So obviously through the work of the Health, Safety and Welfare Committee, we meet on a quarterly basis chaired by Assistant Chief Fire Officer, and we'll continue to really support the work and the focus of that group through collaboration, which obviously has fire authority members on, in addition to trade unions and key stakeholders within the organisation. We'll continue to collaborate with the NFCC. So I sit on the regional National Fire Chiefs Council Health and Safety Group, who feeds into the national one. So we'll continue to collaborate with them, and then continue to collaborate with internal stakeholders through the workplace review group. So states, legal, all the key departments. And then the functional delivery plan. So the health and safety functional delivery plan, which sits under response, has got some key commitments in it in terms of health and safety. One of the biggest challenges, or certainly most emerging areas, I would suggest, that we're facing at the moment, and I would also add that we are making strides in, is firefighter contamination. So a couple of reports have come out over the previous years now, and that's gathering pace at a national level. So we've made a commitment within the functional plan to deliver further on areas in relation to firefighter contamination, specifically improving our procedures, education, tying in with the NFCC, national and regional group. Excuse me. And then finally, we've commissioned internally to look at our options system. So as part of the functional plan, the other piece of work that we will undertake is to look at the sustainability and suitability of options and understand, is this the best system for us? If it is, then we'll look to continue to use and enhance through the options provider and through our business intelligence. But if it's not, we will explore other options to make sure we enhance the kind of suitability and user friendliness of our product for our staff. And that brings me to the end of the presentation. I am happy to take any questions, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Craig. Thanks, Chair. Have there been any injuries or accidents attributed to failure of either PPE or other equipment? And is that logged?
So, not to my knowledge. However, it will feed its way through. Anything like that is logged. So we have, if it relates to certainly, well, whether it relates to PPE or equipment, detailed within our instructions are quite defined and robust procedures, certainly for things like impound investigation. So if we have an accident, say we have an accident at an incident where a BA set fails, that will be impounded, investigated, key stakeholders come and incorporate in that. So yes, and again, we do have, which certainly staff are quite au fait with in terms of reporting near misses or safety observations. So if we have a pump failure, or if we have an equipment failure, we do get impounded, investigated, and we will look to identify root cause, absolutely. But I can't recall any this year.
Right, loads of hands went up at once, so I'm just going to carry on with that side and then come.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for the presentation. A really good report and very easy reading, so thank you for that. I've got 2 points really. On page 13, collisions involving live vehicles by responding, i.e. senior officers, remains at 0. How many vehicles are we talking about?
We're probably talking in the region of, and this is a little bit off the top of my head, but in the region of 35 to 40. So we've got kind of 22-ish station managers, 8 to 10 group managers, 4 or 5 area managers, principal officers. Then we have some, like for the incident investigation team. It's very rare that the incident investigation team respond on blue lights, but they do have the capability. So I would say probably 40 is around the fair figure, with station managers being the most prevalent officers who will respond to support life risk incidents.
Right, thank you for that, because I have been in one of them vehicles when blue lights were on, and it's a very, very scary thing.
Wasn't mine, was it?
No. The other question is, you said the big rise in incidents since COVID has gone up. Do you think that's anything to do with us not being able to get into people's property because of lockdown? You know, to put the smoke alarms in and...
I think it's a variety of things, if I'm being honest. What I would say is one thing that we, as a service, were absolutely able to do was stand up and be counted in response to COVID. So, you know, there were occasions where we may not have been able to cross the threshold of a property, but we put measures in place to be able to undertake activities, whether it be from the end of the drive, and we're still very active in delivering our function, because A is the right thing absolutely to do, and secondly, I think that the community deserve that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it's probably less of that. We are obviously being on the back of a bit of a difficult time in terms of the crisis in the country, really. So, but it'd be hard to actually get to the detail, but I think it's probably less to do with that, because we are working on the front foot.
Thank you.
Okay, before we go any further, I think Dave wants to just add something.
Just to reassure you around COVID, actually our number of house fires or fires in homes coming down. So I don't see anything else from that, but a couple of years ago we didn't get to go over 1,000 house fires around under that now. Current trend is increasing again, so it's going to be a record year again this year. The actual increase in the incidents, I think, is more around collaboration. So it's helping with the ambulance service to make entry for people who, when the ambulance can't get into someone who needs their help. So we've been responding. We've started some more response in that collaboration sort of area, which has pushed some of the numbers. So in some places we're growing, but just to reassure you, home fires and home is going the other way, which is really positive.
I know as a politician of the main road, I found myself a lot of people were, you know, I'm not opening the door.
Yeah, I ran understandably after what we've all been through, but actually we're making real inroads again now. So I didn't want you to leave here thinking that we were struggling in that aspect.
Thank you.
Hi, can I just say, second on Councilman said it is a good document and it's good to see the work that's going on. Can I just ask you, you know, the injuries such as sprains and strains and the pain-only injuries, do we know how many of those officers sought medical attention?
We will probably have elements of that data. So individuals, within the data we will have number of people who basically saw treatment in a walk-in centre or a hospital. We will have data around people who saw our own occupational health, nurses, doctors and advisors in that regard. So yeah, we would have a degree of that data.
Thank you, Jim.
See, we've got questions today, so I'm
Okay.
aware with what's previously been said about the report as well, so thank you
Yeah.
for that and the presentation. I'm just wondering, in terms of reporting, have you found that there have been any barriers to reporting, which you may have overcome, because obviously using the OSIN system, but also is there any sort of like timescale, say if something happens out operationally, what's the timescale for reporting on the system? So it's barriers and timescales.
Okay, so in relation to your first point, I think the barriers that we do a lot of work on in terms of the positive health, safety culture and report culture. I think previously in the OSIN system, you had to log into report. So the introduction, and it's been in for a little period now, with the introduction of the quick reporting tool, the training given to the supervisory and line managers to make these, make that easier. It's the same for near miss and safety observations. It's 4 clicks and it's done. It comes to the health and safety department. And I think when you reflect on some of the figures, so people recording that they cut the finger, I think that would suggest that the barriers are not what they used to be, because actually they report low level stuff. But we've got 5 people who report a cut finger on a certain piece of equipment, then we understand there might be a trend there. In relation to the second part of the question, sorry, just refreshing.
No, so if an incident happens,
Yeah, so
on operationally, what's the timescale for reporting? Because obviously if you
So
in the throes of an incident.
on an operational incident ground, it's immediate. So we implement a command structure at every incident. You can have a really low level incident with one manager, and that's your command structure, and maybe a driver who's supporting, or a bigger instance with a commander and some other command roles. Okay, say everyone being a safety officer. And if an individual becomes hurt on an incident ground, it's pressed upon them to report it to their line of command. That will be dealt with in the first instance as a welfare issue. Are they okay? Can they continue? Do they need to go to hospital, etc., etc.? And then they will report it to fire control as part of that incident. And then that activates an action plan, and then everything kicks in from there. So on the incident ground, they do report it.
So it's as live.
It's as live, yeah, unless if the individual feels a bit of pain and then reports it, just a little bit of pain, and then decides to report it when they get back on the fire appliance or back at the station. But from the second of it being reported, the wheels are fully in motion. Yeah.
And if I may, just one thing is that although geographically and obviously sizable authority around the country, do you, on those meetings that you go into, where does this authority sort of sit in terms of incident reporting accidents, whether it be operationally or within the workplace? I'm just wondering whether there is any sort of correlation between other areas.
We sit in a very, very good position.
Good.
What I will say that's not in the report is the Home Office publish data in relation to in accidents and injuries for firefighters, but they don't normally publish it until October. So I do know from the previous year, we were right near the top or the bottom, depending on how you want to look at it, in terms of performance, with a couple of the indicators. We were number 1 for either low level of accident and injury in that specific area, or top of whatever the other one was. But we do fare well in that, and that will be shared at a later date.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you again, like everybody else has said, for the presentation. It was really good. So, as I say, congratulations to everybody involved on that. Can I just ask how it works when personnel are deployed overseas, which of course we're very proud of them at the moment. But what is the mechanism, for goodness sake, if something did happen out there, whether it be serious or just a minor injury, is that in our figures there, or does that have to go to somebody down in the Home Office?
That I understand is that falls under national resilience. It will find, if it's our member of staff, it will find its way back to the Health and Safety Department. But certainly if you're talking overseas, so I saw International Search and Rescue, which obviously our deputy chief is kind of overseas. They have robust procedures in place for reporting, normally travel and medical staff as well. So all that reporting and dealing with it at the cold face, because we're not really in a position to be able to act upon it. So for example, the crews we've got overseas now, but when they land back in service and they undergo their kind of occupational health review and they fill it, etc., we would pick up anything then for maybe ongoing active monitoring of any injuries.
Sorry, Richard, just one small one as well. The facts and figures that you've given us there, is there data available which shows how many of members of staff then, after having an injury, that they might come back and that on light duties? I mean, where does that show up? How, you know, the staff that have been injured, is that,
So that-
obviously there is an opportunity to come back and just.
Yeah, absolutely. So that data sits within occupational health. So we often discuss that. We get an update through the Health and Safety Committee in terms of some of the accidents, injury, stroke, sickness, absence figures. Occupational health also sits on the workplace review group. I think what we were looking at next year was incorporating their welfare elements of what they report on into this to make it the all-encompassing health, safety and welfare report. But they do have that data of duty days lost when they come back on like duties, etc., etc.
Thanks, Jim.
Are there any further questions? No? Oh, yeah.
One more if I may. You mentioned that there were 14 injuries of staff who were over 30 years of age, I think. Is that 14 of the 49? And how does that compare in terms of the percentage of under 30 staff compared to the percentage of over 30 years of age staff?
Could I just like ask what page you're on?
It was a comment you made.
Was it? Okay. I think it was the actual performance indicator that I was referencing. I've got a feeling it might have been routine activities of firefighters. So it's out of them that there was 14 over the age of 30. We do have all that data, which is broken down a little bit more within the report. But we try and get a fine balance on how much data did we give and how much data did we, where does the filter kind of start and finish.
Yeah.
We do collate all that and we use that internally in the health and safety department to do the deep trend analysis and draw anything out to the top of it. So we have the age brackets from kind of like 18 up to 25, 31, etc.
So would you say that's of concern or just worthy of note?
No, it's all context depending on the makeup of the organisation. So one recruit course we can have new staff joining who are predominantly sort of early 20s, but we've still seen staff coming in on recruit course who are sort of late 30s, early 40s. Probably what doesn't jump out, which would be a trend you might expect, is that the older workforce doesn't significantly jump out as a trend for some of these injuries. But then when you look at kind of, we've been recruited since 2015. Certainly I have seen during that period, some of the staff we take on are very active. They are really into their health, their fitness, their training, things like that. So they're exposed more and more to kind of physical activity. So, yeah, thank you.
Can I just ask, there was 2 major injuries? I'll be back in work or they still off?
One's back in work on light duties. So he broke his ankle. And the other individual, I believe, is not back in work, but is working with occupational health for return to work.
No further questions?
Can I make a comment?
Yes,
Yeah, I'm just thinking how to smoothly help this, because there is problems for years now with a lot of vehicles are doing this. In my opinion, it's parking. We all know in our own street how much parking is cheap. And is there anything that the Scrutiny Committee could advise that would help? I mean, I personally think if there's been a bump on the street, if we just did a leaflet drop to say, we've had a problem in your street, could you just think about how you're parking if there's another emergency in your street? Just easy things like that.
Are you more or less moving that as a recommendation?
Yeah,
I mean, I have no problem with that, but do you want to answer that, Craig?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good idea. So we do have the literature available,
Yeah.
which sometimes we do deploy, we do home fire safety checks. And I think something posted instantly like that, so it's got the picture of the fire engine trying to navigate through two really tight parked vehicles. I think it's a good idea and a really easy win.
Excellent.
Just quickly on that, Chair.
Well, no,
Councillor Wood and Reddy might know.
There's
There's a parking strategy out for council at the moment, which I'll certainly be noting this kind of thing in the strategy, consultation response. So if we can feed it back to all fellow councillors, and I'd recommend all councillors across the region really. I think we do need to, for a whole variety of reasons, we need to get on top of parking. Or we need lots more controlled parking, so to keep a lid on the amount of vehicles stored on the street. But for another reason, to allow, emergency service access to vehicles. So I think we really need to crack down on dodgy parking.
Would it be useful to share the literature that Craig's talking about with the authority then, in terms of the leaflets? It's a simple way forward with that.
Thank you.
Okay, is that?
I was going to make a similar point.
Okay. Okay, can I thank you for that, Craig? It's been very enlightening as usual.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank
Thank you.
Okay,
Can I just confirm if that recommendation is then seconded and agreed, just as I'm fully correct?
Thank you.
And the rest of the report is heritage.
recommendation is that. We've gone to item 5, which is the scrutiny forward work 23 to 25. Do you want to say anything about that?
So this scrutiny forward work plan has been drafted as contained in Appendix A. The proposal is to provisionally cover the next 2 years, as well as several topics members have identified they were interested in scrutinising. The topics proposed are those from the feedback we've had at recent scrutiny workshop, members in this room, and others that have come up at authority meetings, which we've made a note of throughout the last year. So I can just take you to Appendix A on page 51. So detailed in that, there are proposed scrutiny dates. I say proposed because we're going to be a little bit dynamic depending on the topic, because you'll note on there's an environmental impact, and obviously that is a huge area we will never cover in one meeting and we won't have all the answers to. So we propose on some breakdowns will spread throughout the next 2 years, which is what this is proposing. For example, our response to wildfires and floods. We've got alternative fuels, but again, that can be broad. So, for example, we may come back to members on lithium-ion batteries and how we're dealing with that as an organisation for our own staff and the public. But I'm sure in the next 2 years, developments will go on, and we may come back again to update members on other areas of alternative fuels. The same is pathway to net zero. So I know this was raised at the end of last year to add on to the scrutiny plan. That is a very much current process we're all going through. So while we may come back to members in this coming year, I'm sure the following year will come with more of an update and perhaps focus on a slightly different area within that whole plan. It is a living document, so while this is a proposal currently for the next 2 years, it can be added to at any time by yourselves, and also at the full authority meetings if they want to add anything on. So as I say, this isn't our level, this is done, but if anyone has any recommendations to change anything as is, please let me know. The idea is to then put the proposal forward to the full authority meeting on the 12th of October for approval. And if the full authority wish to make any amendments. And then towards the end of this year, we'll look to go back to the full authority on a report on what we've covered on scrutiny and any such recommendations as well. Really close that down. That's really good.
Can I just ask a particular question? It's to do with the auction and the inclusivity.
Yes.
Certainly a year before we would discuss that.
Yes, that's
Any
just,
reason
it's
why
just, no, it's not specific, it's just a provisional date of when we're looking at our next meeting.
So for this year, we'll have January and April. We're also tying into the next HMI report that comes out. And then we can really gather where we've come from the last HMI to where we are today, and even proposals going forward. So that may be another topic, for example, that we break down into two. They were just rough guides. We don't have to wait too long for everything.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I mention that is it's something that I think the authority and our senior officers as well are interested in us actually scrutinising. Obviously, when we can, as soon as possible.
Yeah, the idea will be on the upcoming HMI, like the report goes to full authority. So depending on the dates we look at, maybe look to scrutinise prior to that, and then we know that yourselves will have a chance to review. If we have to look in the past to then work what would sit before us before it goes to full authority. I'll try and marry those things.
To be really good at it, can I just suggest that the culture and inclusivity add stroke their behaviours into that as well, so something that I would like as well. I know it's a word, but it's a word which is sort of come into prominence and how authorities work. Are there any other suggestions for anything to do with scrutiny and what we're scrutinising? If not today, as Rhea says, just get in touch with Rhea and we'll love to put it on our agenda.
Yes. And this is through my own authority. We can't into that we've scrutinised in the past, just to see, just a quick look to see if things have got any better since we actually did the scrutiny. And I think that's a really good idea.
So far. Is that okay as well? So, agree the recommendations on page 47 of the agenda. Is that agreed? Okay. So that's the end of the meeting, unless anybody has anything. Now, the date of the next meeting is going to be the 20th.